Hello, listeners and lurkers. Welcome to Helping Hands After the Game. I'm your host, Lady Lily, here with my co host.
January Garnet.
Today, we're talking about our third session of our game. If I haven't stated before, we're playing the beginner box module known as Menace Under Otari, which will fade into Troubles in Otari, which will then be sparse between Abomination Vaults. A side note for those of you that do not play Pathfinder, Abomination Vaults has actually been converted into D&D 5e as well. So you can enjoy it whether you play Pathfinder or D&D. So to start off our episode, we like to ask a topical question or sort of an icebreaker. So today's question is, what is one memorable moment in any of your tabletop role-playing games or a memorable moment in a TCRPG or tabletop role playing game you've watched? Do you want to go first, January?
Sure. Since I'm still kind of new to tabletop role play, I haven't really had any personal experiences yet. Mostly level zero stuff and just killing rats and stuff. But one of my favorite shows is Critical Role, and that's where I've learned most of my skills, if I have any, anyway. Um, so I have a favorite moment from their second campaign, and I'll try to give context and then highlight the moment. It's for those of you who don't know what Critical Role is. It's a live streaming D&D game played by, as they call it, nerdy ass voice actors, and they've been doing it for almost 10 years now. And they've got a whole conglomerate. They've got animated series, and they're creating their own games, so it's great. But this took place in the second season, and the moment was basically the entire party was invited to dinner by one of the big baddies, which was an evil archmage named Ikathon, Trent Ikathon. And he had actually had kind of a nefarious past with one of the other characters, the party's wizard. His name is Caleb. And Caleb was actually tortured and abused by this Trent Ikathon, who was one of his former teachers. And so in this part of the game, this particular wizard decides to invite them over for dinner. For whatever reasons, they are not sure. They're very suspicious, but they want to hear him out. So they all go, and the whole party knows this, basically the history, and they know that this guy is pretty slimy. And throughout the entire conversation that they have with him, it's very clear that this Ikathon is just without empathy, and he's just evil and selfish, shows no remorse for the pain that he inflicted on Caleb. And instead of taking responsibility, he actually praises Caleb and is like, "Oh, you've become so much stronger than I have, and I foresee you taking over my position here at the Wizard Academy, training future wizards," which of course is very distasteful to Caleb at this point. And there's a lot of great moments between the other characters in this dinner, but there was one particular moment towards the end where they're wrapping up their conversation and the dinner's coming to a close. And before the Ikathon takes his leave, one of the party members, Caduceus, who is a Furbolg cleric of the Wild Mother, he says he has some wisdom he'd like to share with Ikathon, and I'll read the direct quote. He says, "May I say, before I go, I think perhaps you are one of the most powerful mages I have ever had the pleasure to be in the presence of, and for this I would offer a gift. I think it has been a long time since anyone has pointed out to you that you are a fool. Pain doesn't make people. It's love that makes people. The pain is inconsequential. It's love that saves them. And you would know that, but you have no one around you. You said so yourself. You surround yourself with lies and deceptions. And so I wish for you in the future to find someone who will mourn you when you are gone, respectfully." Total mic drop for Caduceus. And of course, what can Ikathon say but other than just disappear, totally humiliated? And then the party ended up taking the rest of the his other classmates out for a walk. So it was kind of an interesting ending, but that was just one of my favorite lines by Caduceus because he really just called this evil sorcerer out in his own home. So, what about
Yeah,
you? What was one of your favorite moments?
just to say on that, that is, I lost I lost interest in the show before it got to that scene, but I saw comments and like snippets, and I didn't get to see the scene, but I read verbatim what had happened.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, I kind of wish I kept up just for that scene,
Yeah, it
because
was great.
it was like you said, it was such a mic drop.
It really was, and it's funny because in the very beginning, when they're all like trying to sit down and stuff, they the whole party sort of like plays tricks on the students and the wizard, like trying to take their seats and like rush to sit down and in places they want to sit, and it's just really funny. It's a
Yeah.
great scene.
So for me, I have many memorable moments. Um, but the one that I want to talk about is in a game that I played with it's actually a game I'm running now called Age of Ashes. It's an adventure path, pre-written adventure path for Pathfinder 2e, and I'm also, because of having so little players, I'm running a GM PC who is basically the healer for the party. She and my husband's PC started getting close, but he has had a lot of trauma and is likely on the ace spectrum. Um, but they were forming some sort of connection. So in the second book, because adventure paths for Paizo for Pathfinder are broken down into smaller books. And so for the book that we were in, we were assaulting the fortress of the big bad of the book. And Ravik, my husband's PC, who is a psychic wizard, since we're dual classing because we're such a small party, one of the abilities he has is to unleash a darker persona of himself that frightens everyone around you, including your allies. This was the first time he had used this ability, and my character, her name is Elduria. She's been trying. He's morally dubious, I guess. He kind of rides the line of gray, and so she's been trying to be a good influence on him. And so he unleashed this dark persona and ended up frightening her as well. Um, but they were facing a creature known as a golem. And golems have specific weaknesses and are immune to a lot of other things. She was the only one that had the means to damage this golem due to its weakness. So she was facing off against the golem when several enemies came in and swarmed them. Needless to say, she had a choice to make. She killed the golem and she had one action left. And she looked around and she had a choice of either standing between Ravik and the enemies or to save herself. Um, so she chose to shield Ravik, which resulted in her death. Because of how system works in Pathfinder, she took a critical blow, which brings you to dying 2. And then she was also taking persistent damage, which causes dying to go up. And she was already wounded 1. So in essence, she went to the dying 4, which kills you. Um or no, that's not what it was. She was at dying 2 because of the critical. She failed her saving throw to reduce her dying value, which put her at dying 3, and then she took persistent damage, which killed her. That's how it went. And this may be a little technical for people that don't know Pathfinder, but it's just the way that the dying system works. Um, Needless to say, Ravik and Mars, our other party member, went on a rampage and killed everyone, but then retreated with her lifeless body. Ravik was extremely distraught, to put it mildly. A little out of character, the day after the session, as I was deciding what I wanted to do because the party had no means to bring her back. Um, and I was deciding, do I let her die and bring in a new character, or do I find some divine way to bring her back? And my husband sent me a song, Paint It Black by Rolling Stones. He said that was Ravik at the moment. And I listened to the song and I was like, oh shit. Oh shit. How he feels towards Elduria. And in an instant, I knew I had to figure out how to divinely bring her back. Well, she was a witch with a patron as well as a cleric, but the patron had been paying more attention to her than her deity. So I decided to come up with something. That night, Ravik sat staring at her body as he laid her in her bedroll beneath the only tent they had. Mars offered him food, which he barely picked at, and insisted heavily that he take first watch. So, one of his archetype abilities is to mess with time. So, um, once his companion Mars, excuse me while I take a drink, um, one of his companion Mars rather, once he was solidly asleep, Ravik started trying to use his time magic to play with her timeline, to try to get back to before she died and try to see if he could do anything. That was the chance that I needed. I did not know at the time what he was going to do, but that was perfect. So he was pulled into this unknown space and he saw Elduria dancing by a bonfire. It was a scene he had previously experienced as a bonfire they had had at their home citadel months prior. So it was the first time she had asked him to dance. And it was the same scene with one exception. In the courtyard where they had the bonfire, in the past scene, there was a pool of murky water. But in this scene that he saw, there was a fountain instead. And so she asked him, to dance with her. She spoke to him and it was all so real. But the moment he touched her to dance with her, she shattered into a million petals that were beautiful colors and then shifted to monochromatic, as the whole scene did as well, except for the glowing fountain. So he moved over to the fountain. Obviously, something was up with the fountain. And he saw a shrouded face in the water, assuming it was her patron. They asked if this was the future Ravik wanted. And he retorted, saying, "Is that even a question?" The patron offered to restore her to life, as she was before, if he would do something for her. She explained that while truth deserves to be known, some secrets remain hidden for the greater good. Now, she said one day he'll come across a secret and have an option. She needed him to keep it quiet. If he did this, if he agreed to this bargain, she would restore Elduria. The cost, though, the cost for breaking the contract would be that she would take back what she had given. thus taking back Elduria's life. Ravik asked so many questions. He was like, I don't know if you could say devil's advocate, but he was like picking every single thing apart. That is what my husband does anyways. Um but ultimately it came to the final price of she would take back what she had given. And he retorted that it wasn't fair as she was unaware of the bargain. So the patron decided and amended her price a bit. A life given, a life taken, if the bargain was broken. She then said if it's not her life, since you're making the bargain, it would be your life. Without a second hesitation, he immediately agreed. In order to sign the contract, he needed to drink from the fountain, and he did so without hesitation. As soon as he drank from the fountain, the vision faded, and he was sitting back before Elduria's seemingly lifeless body. He began checking her over, and the moment his bare hand touched her body, her heart began to beat, and she took her first breath. She was so disoriented at first, but knew she had died, and immediately inquired how she was revived. She knew that they had no way of reviving her. Ravik partially explained what had happened, but wasn't until he was explained to the group that he stated he traded he traded his life for hers if he should break the contract. Elduria was in complete shock and anger, asking him, "Why? Why did you do this?" And he told her, "You know why," insinuating his deep love for her. He stated he'd make the bargain 1,000,000 times over, and that she was the only person in the world he loved. On a little side note to this, I actually drew a scene because before they went to bed, he sat and held her for a while. So the scene I drew was of her death, her past slash future, that scene that he saw of her dancing, and then her rebirth, them sitting together, which I will share on our Twitter after this episode.
What a cool moment. Really
It
powerful.
it, it was it was amazing, and I think I recorded the episode because like nobody had any idea what I was going to do. Nobody knew if I was going to bring her back. Nobody that it was a total surprise. And like I didn't know how exactly I was going to implement the thing, how I was going to get him into this dream space. And so he came up with this idea of he was going to try to use his time magic to fuck with her timeline. And I was like, "Well, there you go. Thank you. You did it
Perfect.
for me."
Yeah.
So do you have it?
Synchronicity.
Yeah, so do you have anything else to say about our favorite moments?
No, I mean that's those are some good moments to very, very memorable.
Do you have more memorable moments about Critical Role?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, one of the
Okay.
most I mean, I can do one with kind of quickly if you want. It's pretty well known in the community where the party is run into a hag
Oh,
and
yes.
um they're trying to basically get a curse canceled for one of their other party members. And
Yes.
several of them go in and try to talk to her, and the character that Laura Bailey plays her name is Jester, and she's She is exactly that name. She's very unpredictable, adorable, smart as fuck. And so she weasels her way and even surprised the DM, Matt, and was able to basically she used the dust of deliciousness and sprinkled it on a cupcake and shared the cupcake with the hag right before making kind of a fake agreement to basically let the hag take her actual hands.
Mhm.
But when she sprinkled the dust of deliciousness, the it makes things taste better, but it also gives them like a disadvantage on charisma checks, I think.
Mhm.
And so then she cast Modify Memory, which is, I believe, a charisma DC, and the hag failed. And
Yeah.
so she basically convinced the hag to release the curse on their other party member, and nobody had to give up anything. And they left before the hag really understood what's going on. And that was an amazing. I mean, I'm just kind of summing it up, but if there's
Yeah.
people listening and they're interested in that, I would highly recommend watching that play out because it was just
It was
so
beautiful.
beautiful and wonderful. So, yeah. And that was
And
also the second campaign.
yeah, that was campaign 2 with Jester and Ford, and I have some memorable moments with them as well, mostly in campaign 1,
Mhm.
but maybe on another future after the game we can talk about other memorable moments.
Absolutely.
Cause I like talking about that, talking about things that stood out to us.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of the episode.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go over everything that had happened. It's a little bit of a story, but I'll try to be a little bit more concise. We'll see. So the party retired to their respective rooms at the end of the day to rest. The next morning, each character completed their morning rituals. Boaz took a walk around town until he reached the river. Being an Azarketi, it's required that he emerges. He emerges. He immerses himself into water every 24 hours. So he used the river to do so. Then headed back to the tavern, wet and refreshed. Sue, on the other hand, came out of her room and got breakfast and went over her notes for the next day. Uh, went over her notes for the previous day, I should say. And Nilro stayed in his room, preparing his spells, communicating with Samal in a seemingly one sided conversation. Um, but once finished, he too joined Sue at the table for breakfast. And about that time, not long after, Boaz arrived, and Magaloy, the owner of the tavern that they were staying at, got everyone breakfast. There was eggs for Sue and oatmeal for Nilro and Boaz. Um, yes, that is a note I took. What they
You
ate. Um,
never know.
yeah, you never know when I'm gonna have to say, "Oh, that oatmeal you ate, yeah, that was not good oatmeal. You're sickened for the rest of the day." oh,
That would be so funny.
I should roll for that sometime.
Yeah.
That would be funny. But so then they spent time over breakfast planning, wondering if they should do anything to prepare before they delved deeper into the caverns. Um, Sue thought it would be a good idea to investigate the mayor since it seemed like the caverns were kind of headed towards his chateau on the rise of O Town. Um, she wondered if he knew anything about the catacombs underneath possibly his house. Um, Boaz, however, thought that they should continue onward and see if they found any connection before confronting the mayor. Sue seemed a little anxious about going back down after nearly losing her entire party previously and narrowly escaping with their lives. So they continued to plan. Wondered about luring the undead out, but Nilro noted that they seemed to be bound to the ossuary they were in. So then Sue thought about luring them to the opening and setting off an explosion, but then Boaz was like, "Well, we got healing potions and holy water from Vandy at the Dawnflower Library." So Boaz thought it was the best to use those. Unfortunately, they didn't have enough money to purchase a higher powered item to help them with undead. So Sue wondered about using tree sap to slow them down. Again, unfortunately, no one had the proficiency in crafting to create such a thing. Nilro explained that he had some spells that might help, abilities to hit harder as long as they were within his range. Um, Boaz thought that the problem came in that they were already hurting when they went into this battle. So coming into it fresh would give them a better opportunity, and that they should take their chances. So it came to a vote. It was 1-1, with the exception of Nilro saying that he would vote to go back down, but he needed to get a few things and stop at Ren's before he went back down. So he left, and they agreed to meet at the fishery once he was done. Nilro went to Ren's Wonders to gather spell scrolls he needed, Soothe being one of them. After gathering the scrolls, with Ren telling him to be safe and smart. As they met at the fishery, they prepared to head down to the basement and subsequent caves below. Sue was a little shaken up because, almost losing her party members the day before. And but Boaz reassured her and said that he believed in the three of them and that someone or something, as he looked at Samal, was protecting them. They carefully made their way back to the barricade that led to the unknown tomb. In the meantime, Sue asked Boaz about his mirror that he had been using and if anyone could use it, to which he explained that he had trust issues with it as it had saved his life. He was at the bottom of a cave and underwater and found the mirror, and suddenly he wished he was on land, and so he was. See, Boaz is a thaumaturge, which uses what seems like useless things to others as antithesis to other creatures, esoterica, such as using the blood of an asambasan, which is a kind of vampiric creature whose fangs are made of cold iron, which means that they obviously have cold iron in their blood and they have to ingest cold iron to keep up their fangs. So, using the blood of an asambasan to harm a creature that is weak to cold iron would be something that a thaumaturge could do. Um, so as they approached the entrance, Boaz became a little nervous and asked if Samal would go check out the crypt, see if what the skeletons were doing. Samal had a slight conversation, it seemed, with uh, Nilro, but reluctantly agreed to scout ahead while Nilro looked through his eyes. As he did so, Nilro leaned up against the wall and he closed his eyes as he connected with Samal, and when he opened them, they were like two small moons, similar to Samal's eyes. He noted the number of skeletons and their positions, and with this knowledge, they snuck into the room and assaulted the skeletons, having the drop on them. There was some light damage to the party, but in the end, Boaz took the last remaining skeleton out, and they were left in an eerie room that had a deep, dark presence that both Nilro and Boaz could feel. Something was wrong here. As they examined the room, they found the primary tomb was that of Asaph. Let me get this right. Asephna Minimus, a member of the Rose Guard who had slew the sorceress Belcora many years before and settled the town of Otari, naming it after one member they lost in the battle. They realized that the entrance to the tomb was from a break in the wall, and that it seemed like this tomb was sealed permanently. No entrances or exits could be found. Sue searched the sarcophagus for traps or anything out of the ordinary. It was solidly sealed with no manner of opening it. However, on the front was an indention with her name on it, and there was another indention in the recess that was the shape of the holy symbol of Erastil, the god to which Asaphena served. Asaphna. Jeez, I can never get it right. Um, there was so much searching the room to find an exit, including playing lit torches in the empty torch holders, and nothing happened. They could not find any sort of exit or entrance to the tomb, so it had to have been sealed permanently. They did what adventurers do and looted the area, deciding due to the dark presence within that they would consult Vandy on the issue and she might have some insights. So, what to do next? They continued down the tunnel that led past the barricade to what they found was an ancient door 10 feet up on a ledge. But as they did so, they also saw kobolds ahead attempting to get into a barred room. They tried to sneak up to the ledge but failed, leaving Nilro on the ground as they got the attention of the kobolds. Of course, they came to attack Nilro first since he was the easiest target, to which he retreated further away and Sue and Boaz climbed down, or teleported in Boaz's case, to face the kobolds. They defeated most of them easily, but due to time constraints, we had to leave it mid battle with one they may not have known about, running off, having thrown his only weapon at Nilro. Where is this little kobold running? Who knows? But we'll find out next session. So,
Forgot that he was running away.
yeah, so that one that I was like, I I was because I was thinking that they had like multiple javelins, because most enemies and stuff that have javelins have like 5 javelins on them.
Right.
So I threw the javelin, and then I looked and he only had 1 javelin. I'm like, well shit, he's screwed. So I'm like, well, what would a kobold do if he throws his own javelin and then realizes he has no other weapon? He's gonna run away.
It's true.
So I had him run away, and well, you'll see what happens with him running away next time. But so that brings us that is the long ass synopsis of what had happened. Is there anything I missed that you would like to point out in the session that
No,
maybe
you
stood out to you?
you really covered it. I was looking over my notes as you were reading yours, and yeah, I pretty much wrote down everything that you wrote down just in shorthand. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
that
mine
covers
is
it.
in shorthand too. I just wrote it out in a story manner just because
Right.
that's how I am. Um so let me ask, how do you feel as a player that the session went? Are there any memorable moments for you? Anything you found too difficult or done improperly? Anything you simply didn't like?
I think for me, well, so the challenges that I'm finding is that well, first of all, that night I was having a really hard time getting into role playing. I couldn't like get into my character's head. And I think part of it was just because I'm still really unfamiliar um, with some of the mechanics, which you actually helped me, so I feel more confident for the next time. Um, but then I kept making suggestions to as far as planning, and nothing really seemed right, and it just I kind of started getting discouraged, and it's hard for me to stay in character when I feel like there's all these other things happening. And I think I just kind of got in my head more than I wanted to, throughout the entire session. And I honestly think that a lot of it is because I just was feeling really just unsettled and not sure of myself. And I try to put that into my character's um, performance, because I feel like I'm trying to yes and if I'm feel like I actually did feel very trepidatious about going back to that same location, because we were all almost wiped the last time, and that was not only a player concern, but my character's concern too.
Mhm.
Um, and so I try to like put that into my character performance, and sometimes it
Yeah.
helps. And so I've had some negative experiences in the past playing with other people and feeling kind
Mhm.
of thrown under the bus. So that was also a fear that was coming up for me at the time. But I think that it really comes down to just being level one and trying to learn a new game, new mechanics, a new and also trying to learn Foundry and get used to how that works. It's all just a lot of new things,
New
and
things, yeah.
my yes, and when you I am my neurodivergence has a really hard time with that. It's like one thing to try to learn one new thing at a time. It can be
Mhm.
challenging enough, but when there's several things all at
Oh,
once,
yeah.
and there's a performative nature about it, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming." But
Overwhelming, yeah.
um you and Eric have been really great as far as being patient and being a resource to answer questions. And so that really does help. And I think that after just recently we talked today and you helped me go through some of the class, because we're multi-classing. I'm a monk magus, so it's kind of interesting, and I needed some help figuring out how I wanted to play that, and you really did help me. So I think I feel a ton more confident about going into our next game. And I think I'm hoping that'll reflect in, my play style. So I'm actually really
Yeah.
excited.
I'm glad. I am so glad that I was able to help you today. And I think that was what we needed to do, was to get into actual mechanics of how it works
Yeah.
and what you could do and examples and things like that.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
for me, memorable moments in the session would definitely be like the Samal and Nilro interactions, because something that the rest of the players don't get to see Samal is his familiar, and
Mhm.
he gets to talk to you, or gets to talk to Nilro, but nobody else has the same language that he speaks. So it's funny because y'all can't understand it, but because we use Discord, I get to make a secret channel that only Eric, my husband, that's playing Nilro, and I can see, and so they can talk back and forth and discuss things. And so that's, while that's not necessarily a memorable moment for the rest of the party necessarily, it's a memorable moment for me getting to play this familiar, which there's more reasons why I get to play this familiar the way I do, but That's for later discovery.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
but
it's clear that there's something very different and interesting about Samal, and I'm looking forward to getting to know this little creature.
yes, I have fallen in love with Samal and what Samal is, and yeah, it's just I love it. And then another memorable moment was uh just the combat and how going into it, especially with the trepidation that Boaz and Sue showed for it,
Mhm.
that once you went into the combat with a better plan, how it worked out much better.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Boaz took a little bit of damage and that was it.
Yeah,
And it was it was just a lot of it was because y'all stayed far away. And so the enemies automatically use instead of running up on you, use ranged weapons. And you weren't able to do the party members that needed to be up close weren't able to be up close and do the damage that they needed to kill them. Because honestly, it's a little metagaming here. They only have like 4 hit points.
yeah,
But originally everybody stayed in the tunnel. And so it's memorable to me because y'all made a plan and enacted that plan and it went off much better.
yeah,
Um so as far as any struggles or frustrations I had, I didn't really have any frustrations or struggles. Um I think that one I think and it's something that I've been working on that I could do better is doing better with my NPCs. I'm trying to work on giving them each personality and not them just being bland the same thing over and over again. But it's not something that comes naturally to me. So it's something I have to work on to have all these different little people that don't have huge backstories, but trying to give little bits of personality to so many people.
yeah. I
So we are at
admire Oh, sorry, I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say
No.
I totally admire GMs who are able to do that. I mean, and to have to keep track of it, it's yeah,
Oh
that's definitely a
yeah.
challenge.
And trying to do different voices, I've kind of given up on that cuz I I suck at doing voices. I really do. I'm trying to learn on it, but I just it yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit when you were talking about it. But how are you liking Pathfinder 2e so far and the automation, excuse me, of Foundry?
Yeah, it's different. It's definitely different than what I'm used to. It's a whole new system. There's definitely a learning curve I'm finding,
Mhm.
um, with just Pathfinder in general, but also with Foundry, in itself. But I think that, again, it's just a matter of getting used to it, being more familiar. Um, it's that initial discomfort of not knowing what to expect because it's unfamiliar. And for me, sometimes that can affect my confidence as far
Mhm.
as playing style. But I honestly think that, especially after today and getting more familiar with it, and then you gave me a bunch of cool reading material that I will delve into as well. So I think that all of that combined will sort of help me feel more confident, and just time. and experience and getting used to it. The thing I really, really miss is not being able to roll dice,
Mhm.
but I would rather I'm okay with that because, I would rather play,
Yeah.
like, and not get I don't wanna get hung up on something like that because playing is what it's really about, and so, um,
And, like,
yeah.
generally, I allow people to roll physical dice if they want to. It just makes, like, especially for Megas and stuff, it makes it a lot easier to use the automation
Yeah.
and roll the digital dice than it
Yeah.
does inputting the numbers into Foundry myself that you
Right.
roll on physical dice.
Yeah, no,
Now
it
for,
makes
like,
total sense.
checks and stuff I could do easily because I could just, I have the DC, and all you have to do is roll a dice and tell me the number, and I'll tell you if you roll, um if your roll succeeds.
Right,
And
right.
now I know something else that you had mentioned at one point in time that you were a little uncomfortable with was the secret checks.
Yeah, but again, I think that that's something that I can just get used to.
Okay.
It's just one of those, like, it's an unknown. It's just an unknown, and I just have a hard time with unknowns, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that I can't learn how to work around it, because, I mean,
Yeah.
life is full of unknowns, and we have to learn how to deal with
Mhm.
that anyway, so,
Oh yeah, for sure.
it's just I'm trying to not let the things that are coming up for me to sort of ruin my gameplay experience, um,
Yeah.
and just trying to learn from them and
May
push
I
through it.
ask, do you understand the reason for the secret checks?
I guess I would make it more immersive.
Yes. And in the way that, like, if you roll a perception check, and if you know that you rolled badly, you're going to know that maybe something's there that you didn't see because you rolled badly.
Mhm.
Versus if you do a secret check, you don't know what you rolled, and the GM just tells you what you see, and you don't know whether or not you rolled good or bad, so you don't know whether or not you may have missed something.
Yeah,
Or like knowledge checks, your character doesn't know what your character doesn't know, or knows what your character knows. So rolling those secret checks, and if you roll low and you see that, you know that you didn't know enough. There's more for you to know. Now, something that I have forgotten to implement and remember, and that's there is so much in this game to remember that I even as long as I played it, I don't remember things.
yeah,
So you can actually, it's a higher DC every time you roll it, but you can roll for more knowledge. So if you roll and you get some knowledge, but you think there may be more out there, you can roll another check and see if you meet the higher DC to get more information.
makes
I just
sense.
generally give the information.
Yeah,
If you make the DC, you get the information, whatever it is.
yeah,
Um so that's kind of how I roll it instead of doing additional checks.
yeah.
Um and something I did mention, or I didn't mention, that I thought that I could do better was in one scene that there was, you were asking about if you knew who Asefna was when you were reading about the town. What I could have had you do is roll another society check and see if in that reading you read about her more extensively.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah,
I do not always think about things in the moment, or the idea of failing forward. So
yeah,
when characters are failing things, then instead of just being like, "Oh, you just can't do it, you keep failing," figuring out a way to help them succeed even though they fail.
Yeah.
So that's also something that I'm working on and having to remember. It's just not something that's drilled into my brain.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, I know that you like playing in person. You like the physical dice. You like to be able to see people's faces and their reactions and use that intimacy between players because you see their body language, you see their reactions, stuff like that. Um but I wanted to touch on the reason why I like virtual games versus in person. So there are pros and cons to virtual and in person games. I personally prefer virtual games for many reasons. Uh, One, you have a bigger pool of people with whom you can game with instead of having to have local people. So, and for example, you're in a different state than I am, but we're able to have a game together because we're doing it virtually.
Yeah.
Um, and you might not live in an area where there's a lot of tabletop role playing game players.
Yeah.
So and then for me, the digital aspect really vibes with my neural divergence.
Yeah.
It just I don't know why, just digital works for me. Even so for whatever reason, doing things digitally just works, whether it's notes, agendas, writing, and of course TTRPGs. For me, I'm able to create using Dungeon Draft, fabulous maps that really convey the area in which the PCs find themselves. In Foundry, I'm able to make ambiance and set the scene in a way that is very hard to do in person without multiple tools.
Yeah.
Um, I also don't I don't like hand drawing maps. I'm lazy. They
Mm.
get super complicated. Maps get super complicated at times, and I am lazy. I do not want to draw a whole dungeon.
Right.
Um, Whereas I can do it in Dungeon Draft fun and easily.
Yeah.
Um, Within Foundry, I can set lightings, I can set walls, even music that I can set up for specific scenes. And there's so much automation within Foundry and within VTTs in general. It's incredible. Now, Foundry is not the only VTT, it is the VTT that I've chosen. We've worked with a couple other VTTs, and it's just the one that seems to fit what works for us.
Yeah.
And there, with Foundry, there are so many people creating modules to add to the quality of the game. From macros that automatically do things for you to things like safety cards and break time notifications. I do love the aspect of in-person games because you can see the expression on people's faces. But virtually also allows people to be in their own space, comfortable and safe. There is of course the option of using a camera if they feel like being seen, but sometimes people just don't want to be seen but want to play the game. So we use Discord to facilitate voice and video chats.
Yeah.
So,
It's been really, I like it. I mean, I'm getting used to it.
so back to the tavern. How are we feeling about the next session?
I'm feeling really good actually. Especially after talking today and figuring stuff out as far as what to do in battle and how to play my character. Um, Even though it's been a bit of a challenge for me, personally, I try to look at those challenges as, a learning opportunity, and I do learn something
Mhm.
every time. So, but yeah, now I'm really excited to just kind of get into it and see what I can do. So I'm definitely looking forward to next week.
Awesome. I am glad. So, playing Pathfinder is a great hobby. However, it's also a way to pros- excuse me, to process certain emotions and experiences within our lives. It helps us process, and I say, as I said, playing games like Pathfinder, it's not necessarily Pathfinder specific, but it helps us process in a safe environment. It also allows us to explore things outside of our comfort zone and aspects we do not generally do in real life. So, are there any final thoughts that you want to say about the game or about playing in general?
I can't think of any. I'm definitely excited, and I'm really looking forward to, continuing to learn and, explore this world because this is totally brand new to me. So my
Yeah.
curiosity is way stronger than my discomfort.
Yeah, it is such an immersive world. That's another reason why I love Pathfinder for many reasons. One, everything you need to play the game mechanically is available to you online.
Yeah.
Now, lore based, there is some lore, a decent amount of lore actually on the wiki, but they can't put everything there because they're not actually affiliated with Paizo and they don't have the rights to it.
Mhm.
But they can put some things on there. And then just the world is so immersive and growing so much, and it's there's just so much to explore that like for me, Eric and I have so many adventure paths and things that we want to play that like it will take our entire lifetime to play them, and they're still going to be coming out with more. And I'm going to be like, "Well, we want to play this and we want to play this and this sounds cool too."
Yeah.
So it is a lot, and it is so cool.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I think that brings us to a close. So thank you for joining us to continue our journey through Otari. We hope that you've enjoyed the experience within and outside of the game as we talk about it in our experiences, thoughts, and feelings. So we hope that you've enjoyed this so far and are looking forward to what comes next. Don't forget to love each other. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.